Story 1. My name is John, and I worked as a night watchman at the restful Willows Cemetery in the small town of Brooksburg for nearly a decade. The job paid fairly well and primarily involved driving my pickup around the sprawling 200-acre property to ensure no troublesome teenagers were causing any mischief. After so many uneventful nights traversing the creepy grounds, I'd become immune to the unsettling atmosphere. One early autumn morning, I wrapped up my routine shift around 6 a.m. and headed home to catch a few hours sleep before meeting up with friends that evening. At 10:30 a.m., my cell phone jolted me awake. It was a call from my supervisor, Ellis. He asked if I'd noticed anything strange during my patrols the previous night. I confidently told him no, it had been another quiet night. His tone changed, hesitantly informing me there had been an incident of vandalism overnight. A grave had been desecrated with vulgar graffiti. I was shocked, insisting I hadn't witnessed any suspicious activity. Ellis requested I come to the cemetery so we could document the damage and begin cleanup. An uneasy feeling gnawed at my gut during the drive over, hoping this was just a cruel teenage prank. When I pulled up to the small maintenance garage, Ellis was speaking with a distraught couple, likely relatives of the desecrated grave's occupant. Approaching slowly behind them, my eyes fell upon the stone marker, and I gasped aloud. Crude, hateful language and imagery coated every inch of the once dignified monument. I did not recognize the name carved into the granite slab, but the birth and death dates told the horrific story, 2012 to 2020. This was the grave of a child, only 8 years old, the parents weeping before it just a few feet away. Rage and anguish gripped my heart instantly. What kind of deranged monster would defile the resting place of a small child in such a way? As Ellis escorted the grieving couple to his office, I grabbed cleaning supplies from the shed and resolved to repair the damage. Hours of intense scrubbing finally removed the bulk of the vile vandalism. Exhausted and disturbed, I updated Ellis on the status of the cleaning efforts. Together, we reviewed security footage from the sole functioning camera mounted on the main office, but its outdated technology and limited field of view revealed no clues of the previous night's events. Ellis contacted local authorities to file a report, as the cemetery was public property managed by the Parks Department. For the next few weeks, the department assigned rotating guards to stake out with me during my night patrols. My new ride-along companion was Officer Clark, a retired policeman who loved telling me graphic stories from his years walking the beat. As we navigated the shadowy paths, he'd point out plots where he responded to more than a few calls regarding their inhabitants. His morbid anecdotes made the investigations into our mystery vandal more exciting. After 2 weeks, with no further occurrences, however, the thrill faded to boredom. Sensing the desecrator was a lone disturbed individual unlikely to return, the patrols gradually tapered off until I was alone again night after night. Another 7 days of my routine vigil passed without incident. As I concluded a section sweep near the disturbed child's resting spot, an odd flutter of movement caught my eye from across the way. I was a good 200 feet from the small grave, but something about its appearance seemed off. Uneasy, I slowly crossed the distance, sweeping my flashlight beam over the plots and monuments surrounding it. About halfway there, I picked up the edge of an unnatural shape upon the earth adjacent to the marker. Heart suddenly racing, I cautiously approached until my light revealed a figure laying perfectly still in the dirt beside the child's headstone. Shock and confusion flooded my senses. Was this a corpse, dumped from its casket in some bizarre ritual? I crept forward slowly until I was close enough to ascertain the humanoid form appeared to be a living person attempting to hide. Just then the dark shape sprang up, eliciting a startled cry from me, and fled into the night. I stood perplexed for a moment before retreating to Radio Ellis. Together, we waited by the patrol truck for police to arrive. All alone at the disturbing scene, my eyes were drawn to a ragged hole clawed out of the soil before the tiny granite marker. Revulsion twisted my gut, imagining someone manually digging with bare hands to reach what lay just beneath. In the following days, Brooksburg City Council approved funding for upgraded night security, including cameras, motion lights, and round-the-clock guard stations. Ellis brought on more staff, so someone was always posted within direct eyeshot of the victimized child's resting place. As for the perpetrator's identity, it remains a troubling unsolved mystery. In my decade tending that lonely graveyard, no paranormal sighting unsettled me more than the malicious acts of the unseen living that defiled hallowed ground that autumn. For the many weary spirits kept safely in my watch those many nights, it was the most traumatic disturbance imaginable. Story 2. I was 18 years old, freshly graduated from high school, and relishing having the whole summer stretch out before me with no responsibilities. I had started working full-time at my former high school doing clerical work in the front office to earn money for college in the fall. My family was heading out on a big trip to visit relatives out of state, but I opted to stay home alone so I wouldn't have to miss a concert I'd already bought tickets for. I was looking forward to an entire week by myself in the empty house to relax. Plus, with most neighbors also being away on summer vacations, I figured I could blare music or have a few friends over without noise complaints. One sunny summer afternoon, I had a craving for some fried chicken and decided to go pick up takeout from a nearby place I liked. I hopped in my reliable old Civic and set off. However, an accident up ahead rerouted traffic on the main road, so I turned down an unfamiliar side street that Google Maps indicated would get me home. I slowly cruised along what turned out to be an industrial area lined with warehouses, mechanics' garages, and vacant lots. Off to my left, I noticed a dingy repair shop, its small parking lot empty apart from a single vehicle, an old clunker car with only one functioning headlight. As I passed by, the one working headlight suddenly flicked on, flooding my peripheral vision with a blaze of white. I remember finding it odd that the light switched on right at that exact moment. I was adjacent to the lot entrance. I glanced over my shoulder curiously and was unsettled to see the vehicle pull out to follow behind me a ways back. The lone headlight boring into my rearview mirror gave the car an ominous one-eyed appearance. However, convincing myself the timing was just coincidence, I dismissed my unease and continued towards home. Yet over the next few minutes my stomach sank as I made a couple random turns only to see the battered vehicle doggedly maintaining the same distance behind me. Now flashing a low fuel warning, my hands clenched the steering wheel as the reality I was being pursued sank in. I feverishly debated whether to just keep driving endlessly hoping to lose my tail, or head straight home figuring a familiar location might offer some kind of advantage if things escalated. But the idea of stalling out on some desolate back road made me decide I'd rather take my chances on home turf. Heart hammering as I turned down my street, the blood drained from my face seeing that lone relentless headlight swing onto the road behind me. I pulled into my driveway utterly panicked now, the predator still fixed on my bumper. In desperation, I threw the car into reverse, but so did they, blocking any path of escape I attempted. Our vehicles awkwardly jockeyed back and forth as I tried maneuvering room to flee, while the ominous eye of their headlight held me pinned. Finally, I sped further up the drive and did a quick 3-point turn, resolving that hiding wasn't an option. I had to stand my ground. Fueled by terror and anger, I flung open the door wielding the little pocket knife, always stashed discreetly near the driver's seat. Brandishing the blade toward the windshield glowing under my high beams, I shouted for them to leave immediately or else. Perhaps unprepared for such aggressive defiance, the vehicle finally crept backwards and retreated slowly from the driveway. I should have got inside and called the police instantly, but in my adrenaline-flooded state, I just stood peering into the void of night, watching their tail light recede down the street. Suddenly, they stopped halfway down the block and alarm jolted through me as the driver door creaked open. I spun and raced into the house to dial 911 as footsteps echoed outside along with the testing of door and window handles. Blood rolled in my ears, and I'd begged the dispatcher to hurry before darting upstairs to lock myself in my bedroom. The prowler began banging violently on the front entrance, shouting to be let in, as I cowered in my room begging under my breath for someone to help me. To my immense relief, minutes later red and blue lights flashed through my window as a patrol car raced into view chasing off my attacker. I watched in tearful disbelief as they slapped cuffs on the large disheveled man by the curb, apparently extremely intoxicated when questioned. Though they transported him to jail, I spent the rest of that week barricaded inside, jumpiness and dread permeating the walls whenever I pictured his crazed face leering past panes of glass hungry for a victim. I still shudder imagining what sinister intentions were behind his relentless hunt for prey that long-ago summer night. But I suppose I should just be grateful my defiance saved me from finding out. Story 3. My name's Nate, and I work as a community patrol officer in the affluent neighborhood of Willow Creek Estates on the outskirts of the sprawling metropolis of Las Palmas. If you aren't familiar with the job, I'm essentially neighborhood watch, cruising the tidy streets in my little gold cart, making sure things stay quiet and keeping an eye out for anything amiss. The HOA residents pay my salary to help them feel more secure bordering the much rougher downtown neighborhoods. Part of my patrols involve noting NECC and our violations on properties. Stuff like garbage cans left out or lawns exceeding maximum height restrictions. It's pretty petty, but it's what the community wants, so I just do my job reporting violations to the HOA. The shift runs from 8 p.m. to 3 a.m., which is an odd schedule, but I suspect it's when the fewest prying eyes are around to catch HOA leadership breaking their own precious rules. Before last week, it had been an uneventful if boring year on the job. Sure, I'd have to occasionally wake up a kid who fell asleep on a pool floaty past midnight, but nothing too crazy ever happened. But what I stumbled onto last Wednesday still haunts me. I was halfway through my routine patrol route that evening, required to hit checkpoints on the maze of quiet streets at scheduled times throughout the shift. At 10 p.m., I pulled up to the main community pool and clubhouse. Per protocol, I unlocked the gate and swept the area to make sure no one had accidentally gotten locked in or, more likely, hopped the fence for a late-night swim. Coast clear, I secured the facilities and headed back to my cart when movement caught my eye. Across the clubhouse parking lot, a figure sat hunched on a park bench, face obscured by a dark hoodie. Given the hour, I assumed it was some resident's rebellious teen, possibly meeting up for a drug exchange. Not wanting to embarrass the kid or stir up complaints, I chose to just continue my patrol and let him be. An hour later, I completed my scheduled route and began simply driving the labyrinth of identical streets and cul-de-sacs on another mandated pass. As I neared the clubhouse again, I noticed with unease that the hooded figure still sat stationary on the bench, unchanged as if a statue. I felt unsettled but proceeded driving, telling myself it was none of my concern. 10 minutes later, I pulled up to a stop sign and froze. Speak of the devil, that hooded man from the bench stood at the crosswalk directly ahead of my cart, hands stuffed in pockets. As I slowly rolled forward, he turned and stepped up to my window, asking where a specific address was. Caught off guard, I stammered that I wasn't sure, though I could easily have looked it up on my patrol tablet. But something about this guy gave me the creeps. No reaction to my response, he repeated the exact same question in a flat tone. Officially freaked out, I quickly said I had to go and hit the gas. Checking the mirror, I watched him standing there watching me drive off until out of sight. I parked around the corner shaking, mind racing over what had just happened. Maybe it was nothing, just some tweaker. But why did he want that address? And why repeat the question so strangely when I didn't have an answer? Curiosity got the better of me, and I typed the address into the GPS system on my tablet. It was only a few streets over. I hesitated before deciding to drive by, just to check that everything looked normal. Cruising slowly past the neat single-story home, I spotted no signs of trouble. Lights out, cars in the driveway. I don't know what I expected. As I looped back out of the subdivision, though, I nearly crashed into a stationary mailbox. There he was again. The hooded figure strode quickly along the sidewalk, making a beeline for the house I'd just cased. I watched in horror as he strode straight up to the front door and began knocking loudly. Lights flipped on from inside, and after a minute the door opened a crack. Before I could even process what was happening, the hooded man burst through the entrance, tackling the helpless homeowner inside. Heart pounding in my ears, I grabbed the radio and called it in, requesting immediate police backup to that address. Cowering low in my seat, I stared helpless at the seemingly quiet home, the gravity of what was happening inside unknown, but clearly dangerous. Every fiber of my being said to stay put, but I agonized over whether I was failing my duty by not trying to intervene. Several endless minutes passed until suddenly the attacker emerged abruptly, beelining away from the scene down a side street. I was incredulous that several more minutes ticked by without any sign of sirens or flashing lights. When a single patrol unit finally rolled up, nearly 15 minutes had passed since my frantic call. The officer rushed inside while I gave a statement. The scene that followed was horrific. The homeowner unconscious in his foyer, bloodied and bruised from the savage beating. In the days after, more harrowing details emerged. This was a complete stranger attack. The victim didn't recognize his attacker. Nothing was stolen. Just brutal, targeted violence, allegedly instigated by a total mystery assailant. A week later, I still replay those terrifying events over and over. I should have intervened, should have chased the guy down. Maybe they'd have caught him then. The not knowing is what eats me inside. Who he was, why he did it, if he'll be back, or if he's out there right now planning something even worse. Helpless to act, haunted by the hooded face I can't erase from my memory.